All right. Welcome everybody for our Texas NORML October Candidate Forum. As you know, we host our Candidate Forum in the February month, usually for primaries, and then again in October in advance of the general election. So we're really excited to have some great Austin area candidates here with us tonight. And before we kick it off and turn it over to our candidates to each have 3 minutes to discuss their positions on the cannabis issues, I did want to just kind of give an overview of where we're at right now with cannabis laws in Texas. So some of you guys are watching us right now in Zoom or live on Facebook. We'll also have this up on our YouTube channel, but I wanted everybody to understand the context with which we are talking about cannabis law reform tonight. So here in Texas, we currently have a robust hemp market. However, there are restrictions that manufacturers cannot produce smokable hemp products. So that is an issue that affects Texas businesses. In addition, there are some local municipalities that have tried to institute some mitigation efforts, but possession of 2 ounces or less of flower can still carry a penalty of up to $2,000 fine and 180 days in jail. You can also lose your driver's license due to that. Additionally, many people don't know that possession of even a tiny amount of concentrates is a first-degree state jail felony. And lastly, we do have a medical cannabis program here in Texas, though it does need some significant improvements to make sure that there's appropriate access and affordability for patients here in the state. So I want to go ahead and start our night off with House District 46. We have Tom Kost, Libertarian, who is running for House District 46. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Tom.
Jax, thank you very much for everybody that's attending today. Appreciate that, and really glad to be with you here today. My name is Tom Kost. I'm running for Texas House District 46, and that district encompasses most of Pflugerville, goes out into the east countryside, and then wraps back around into East Austin, approximately between 290 and the river. And this is my first time running for any public office. So to be running a statewide office is a little shocking even to me, but I'm learning a lot. And look, I've lived here in Texas since, 1985. I love it here. I'm an engineer, I'm a product manager, I'm a business person. And really, as a libertarian, I'm always going to be in favor of your individual rights, particularly when it comes to marijuana. I've used marijuana. I have family members who suffer from anxiety, and I've seen the benefits of them using cannabis. And quite frankly, the fact that the government could even say that something that grows freely on this planet is illegal is just a real mystery to me. And so, if I were to be elected, I would certainly be looking to repeal all the laws and regulations restricting the use of cannabis. I would go further and say that, we would accept some sort of legalization as an intermediate step. But I think, the idea that we would tax and regulate it heavily like other states is really not the final destination. It needs to be freely available for both medical and recreational usage. You should be able to grow it at home. And the only reason you can't do that is because the pharmaceutical industry is profiting by selling you poisons like hydrocodone and other substances that, marijuana is a great substitute for that. So once again, I'm a libertarian. We will always fight for your individual freedoms. And part of that means, some people may not agree with this position or that position. Part of being a libertarian and voting for people's freedoms is you have to accept that other people are going to do things that you may not like. And I know we're here on the same bandwagon, but be aware of that and just know that on this particular topic, we all agree, but always fight for all the freedoms all the time, because you are the power. If we work together, we can accomplish anything. Thank you very much. Once again, I'm Tom Kost.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you for joining us tonight. Next, I want to introduce House District 47, one of the candidates there, Vikki Goodwin. She's a Democrat and an incumbent in the district there. So I want to turn it over to you, Vikki. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about your position statement on cannabis policy.
Thank you, Jax. It's so good to be here. I am Vikki Goodwin, and I am currently serving my second term representing North and South Austin and Western Travis County, which is District 47. I appreciate the opportunity to tell your members and you about my positions on marijuana. At this point in time, a number of other states have successful medical marijuana programs. They have decriminalized small amounts of marijuana, and some have allowed tightly regulated recreational use similar to regulated alcohol. I'm in favor of following these other states to expand and improve our use of marijuana for medical purposes, to decriminalize and to regulate recreational use of marijuana. It seems like these issues were front and center in past years, but now we're in a place where we are fighting just to allow women to have control to make decisions over their own bodies. We are pushing to enact tighter gun laws to make our communities safer. And we're pushing back against the governor and lieutenant governor's school voucher plans. It's tiring and takes us away from important issues like reforming our marijuana laws. And yet, I feel certain we are moving in the right direction. This election on November 8th will have a great impact on what we can do with regards to marijuana regulations. It would be great if we allowed citizen-led ballot initiatives in Texas. I think there are a lot of things that we could do if citizens were able to vote. We've seen that the majority of Texans believe that we should expand our medical marijuana, and many Texans believe that we should have recreational use as well, just like we do for alcohol. My voting record shows that I'm aligned with the priorities of your group. I have voted for the expansion of medical marijuana. I voted for the legalization of hemp and for the decriminalization of small amounts of marijuana while I have been in the House. Texans with cancer, chronic pain, or PTSD should have access to a full spectrum of medical cannabis with their physicians making dosing decisions. We still need to make it easier for doctors to prescribe and less expensive to get on the compassionate use registry. And we need to continue the work to change the law so that the possession of less than an ounce of marijuana does not result in jail time or a criminal record. Like most people, I understand that recreational marijuana is not that different than enjoying alcohol to relax and unwind. In the past, I've been very impressed with the information that you've provided Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy and all the advocacy work you do. Oh, and one other thing, my oldest son is a doctor now. He's in a residency program. I have suggested to him numerous times he should do some research on medical marijuana. So we'll see if he takes that advice. I also have several friends who have MS, and I think all of them have tried some form of marijuana as an aid in their pain management. Some are more adamant about their support for marijuana, but they all believe, as I do, that we should do more research and use this plant that is so abundant and relatively easy to grow. So there's a lot of issues facing Texans these days, but I'm glad that you're engaged in the political process. It's so important to do your research and vote for candidates who will move us in the right direction. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Representative Goodwin. I appreciate you joining us tonight and for your yes votes in the past, of course. I wanted to take that opportunity to remind everyone that you can actually go and look at legislative voting records at texasnormal.org/voter guide. And if you are watching on Facebook, YouTube, or here on Zoom, make sure you drop any questions that you would like to ask the candidates in the comment or chat. So next, we're going to go to House District 48. And we have two of the candidates here tonight. We're going to start off first with Representative Donna Howard, who is the Democratic incumbent in House District 48. So I'll turn it over to you, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Jax. And thanks to all of you for being here this evening. I think you're going to probably hear a lot of commonality amongst all of us here that have joined us tonight. The fact is that we all support access to recreational marijuana, that we need to legalize marijuana, we need to decriminalize possession, we need to ensure that it's available for medical purposes, and we need to make sure that we're looking at the economic impacts, revenue impacts to our state of being able to have regulated marijuana use in our state. I carried legislation several sessions back, as multiple legislators have, to bring this to the voters as a constitutional amendment. We were looking at that time, a couple of sessions back when I carried this, at really kind of a three-pronged approach. Some of the legislators were approaching it in terms of the medicinal uses. Some were looking at it in terms of the decriminalization. And because I'm on appropriations, I was looking at it in terms of the revenue impacts. And we certainly know that other states have enjoyed a robust revenue stream as a result of legalizing marijuana. We're coming in a little later, so that means we've got more competition there, which means we may not make as much as if we had done it earlier. But the bottom line is the studies indicate that at a very minimum, we would probably see at least $1 billion coming into our treasury every year. And as other states have done, I would want to look at what do we do with that? How do we earmark those funds for something in particular? Or do we just put it into the general revenue fund? A lot of states have used it to do such things as address those communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the criminalization of marijuana possession. Looking at helping with economic development, workforce issues, that sort of thing, when we've put so many people behind bars for possession of marijuana and even low amounts. And luckily that went down after the legislature voted to legalize hemp. And that has had an impact on reducing the arrests, which I'm very glad to see, but there's still way too many, and that disproportionately impacts certain members of our community, in particular members of color. So we still have to fight this. Looking at the revenue streams, it's going to be kind of a difficult challenge this time when we're coming into the legislature with a huge surplus. That's not going to be as effective an argument as it has been in previous sessions. We'll still use it, of course. But I think obviously the majority of Texans support this, just like they do a lot of other freedoms that the legislature has been restricting. But we're going to keep working together on this. And I've been really happy to work with my colleague. I'm a nurse. I've been working with Stephanie Click, who I'm a Democrat. She's a Republican. She carried the medical use of marijuana, cannabis, and I've helped her in that legislation. I will continue to do whatever I can to help her with that because we've made little incremental progress. We have a lot more distance to travel there. But bottom line is, this is something that I think we can all get behind. It is bipartisan. It should be bipartisan. And we need to look at making this a public health issue rather than a criminal justice issue. The fact that this is being regulated by DPS, I think, is the wrong place for us to be regulating medicinal marijuana. It should be under our health departments, not the Department of Public Safety. I think that sends the wrong message, and I think it just leads to the stigmatization of what we're talking about here. So I've been happy to work with y'all in previous sessions. I'm looking forward to do that again this next session. So thanks for having us, Jax, and everybody else.
Thank you so much, Representative Howard. It's always a pleasure to have you join us. And we also have from House District 48, excuse me. We have quite a few districts tonight in the Austin area we're covering, but we have Daniel McCarthy, the Libertarian candidate. And Daniel, I want to turn it over to you for you to share what your positions on the cannabis policy issues are.
Okay, hey, thanks everybody for being on the call tonight. Especially those of you who, like me, are at a Yom Kippur dinner and hiding out back. I did manage to get a plate though before this started, so I'm going to be munching. my views on the policy are going to be very much in line with the rest of the libertarians on the call, and even a lot of what Donna said. I mean, Representative Howard is correct that there's no way that this should be regulated under DPS. I would go a step further even in saying that it shouldn't be regulated at all. It's a plant. It should be regulated the same way, I don't know, oregano is regulated. If you feel like consuming it, that's really a personal choice. And that just goes back into, what Tom was saying earlier too, is this is a matter of personal freedom. I disagree with the legalization route, although I will defer to NORML on what they think will get us to the next step, at least, because what we have right now is terrible. If we could just, if we could make any steps in the right direction, I'm going to be on board with that as a representative. But ultimately, I think the final step is to completely decriminalize. Sorry, hold on a second. Stop. All right. Decriminalize. That marijuana and all drugs. It's not. I don't want it to just stop with marijuana. There's so many therapeutic benefits that we've been showing more and more lately, as more and more researchers have been experimenting with MDMA and psilocybin and LSD and anything that those. It takes a responsible person, but that's everything. Everything takes a responsible person, and that's again back to personal responsibility, which is, I think, the thrust of my argument here tonight. And then again, I appreciate y'all having us on.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us from the back porch. I hope that breaking the fast was enjoyable for you. So thank you very much for joining us. Next, we're going to go to House District 50. We have two candidates from that district. A little background here is that we had some redistricting happen in Texas, and some districts were erased. And one of our candidates tonight, Representative Talarico, is now running in this new district, House District 50, or I should say reconfigured. House District 50. So we'll first turn it over to Representative Talarico, who is the Democratic candidate for House District 50.
Perfect. Thanks, Jax, and thank all of you for being on here and talking about this important issue. Yeah, so my situation is a little confusing. I used to represent House District 52 in Southeast Williamson County, and it's the district where I was born. It's a district that I love very deeply. Thankfully, I still have the opportunity to represent them officially until January, but I am running in House District 50, which is just south of 52. It's the neighboring district, because I was gerrymandered out of my seat in the last special legislative session. And we could talk about redistricting reform and the need to eliminate things like gerrymandering because they disrupt the democratic process and silence people's voices, but that's for another forum, another panel. But one of the reasons that I got gerrymandered out is because I'm an effective legislator. And I proposed legislation last session that would have legalized marijuana in the state of Texas. It would have expunged all past arrest records, and it would have taxed the revenue from marijuana and used that tax revenue in order to fund early childhood education across the state. And so, this is an issue that I care a lot about, and it's one that has implications not just for the criminal justice system in Texas, but it will also have important impacts on the education system. One thing I'll point out that I don't think has been mentioned is that this is an issue that enjoys bipartisan support. My fellow colleagues in the House will remember that we had a historic marijuana reform bill that passed with overwhelming support in both parties through the House. Unfortunately, it was killed in the Senate by our lieutenant governor, but there were Republicans in the House of Representatives that supported important reforms to our marijuana laws. So I think it was in the last polling I saw, there's only 13% of people who think marijuana should be completely illegal. So it's a very small minority of folks who want to ban this stuff outright. So we should be operating from a place of strength as a movement for this issue. And again, it's not a democratic movement; it's bipartisan. So happy to see other candidates from other parties here as well. Yeah, thank you for all the work that y'all do and Jax that you do. These changes in public opinion don't just happen on their own. They happen because people like y'all are on the front lines having these conversations and pushing us forward. So honored to be here and would be honored to have your support.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Representative Talarico. I appreciate that. We are also welcoming Ted Brown, who's the Libertarian candidate for House District 50. So I'll turn it over to you, Ted, for your 3 minutes to discuss your position.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jax, and thanks to NORML for having us all on. I'm Ted Brown, running in District 50 in North Austin area, and I'm also chairman of the Libertarian Party of Travis County. Now, I've been a libertarian for my whole adult life because I believe in personal freedom, economic freedom, individual rights, and a very limited government. And one of the views that I've had for decades is that there should be no laws against marijuana usage. Basically, this has been a libertarian issue since the party was founded over 50 years ago. This is the libertarian issue. When no one else really was advocating for this issue, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 00s, in the teens, and now in the 20s, the Libertarian Party consistently has favored ending marijuana prohibition. Now, there's certainly a question of whether it should be decriminalization or whether it should be legalization, whatever we can get, frankly. When I lived in California back in the 90s, I helped with Prop 140, the first medical marijuana initiative. Libertarians were very involved in that, and that was an important milestone for this issue to get before the public as a medical issue, when it doesn't necessarily have to be a medical issue. But most of the public, vast majorities, agree that medical marijuana is the way to go. And it's I'm thankful and I'm very glad that the Democrats have come aboard over the last few years. And I really appreciate the representatives who are on the call tonight for their work on the issue in the legislature. We certainly need to do that. We need to, as far as I'm concerned, we need to decriminalize marijuana. It should not be against the law for any adult to use any substance that they want, to put any substance in their body. It's the matter of personal choice, personal responsibility. And that's pretty much the case across the board. I'm pro-choice on everything. People can choose how they live their life, as long as they're not violating the rights of other people. And that's what we really need a voice like that. Many voices like that in the legislature. That's what libertarians are here to provide. Now, we also, as James Talarico mentioned, we need to certainly release prisoners who are in jail now or in the past, have their records expunged for marijuana convictions. No one should ever have gone to jail or ever been fined for having a plant. That's just terrible. And there definitely needs to be a group of legislators, and I know there are, that can get a bill like that passed. The one person who is holding it all up, unless you get rid of Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, it'll all be for naught. You can have a bunch of libertarians and Democrats in the state house, but until you get rid of Dan Patrick presiding over the state Senate, there's not going to be any marijuana reform in this case. That's probably a good reason, among many, that we should have the initiative process, as I believe Representative Howard noted, in Texas, like many other states do. Most Western states have it, I believe. The initiative, the referendum, and the recall, which are very important aspects for the public. And if there was an initiative process, Texas voters certainly would have legalized medical marijuana long ago, and probably recreational as well by now. There's a majority in every party in the state that favors that position, and there's really no political downside for all the parties to support that. But you notice there's no Republicans on this call. None of the Republican candidates in Travis County have come on this call or to even speak to the NORML members. So that tells you something, because they don't think there's any political benefit. They're not going to be interested in the issue, it doesn't seem to me, and that's very unfortunate. So in my opinion, certainly I applaud the Democrats. Please keep up the good work on that. but we also need libertarians in the legislature, and a lot of them, because we need the viewpoint of individual rights and personal freedom across the board. And we often don't get that in the legislature. There's just too much legislating in the legislature where both sides, Democrats and Republicans, have different plans to run people's lives and want to have use the power of government to do that. Libertarians just want to leave you alone, certainly on the marijuana issue and across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted, for your time. I know whenever you said that the lieutenant governor was the pinch point, the obstacle, basically everyone was like, yes, I think we're all in agreement on that. We have two more candidates that we're going to talk to before we have a brief Q&A and open up the floor for that. But next we're going to go to House District 51 with Lulu Flores, who is the Democratic candidate. I'll turn it over to you, Lulu.
Hi, good evening, Jackson. Thank you for having me and having all of us really to discuss this important issue. Excuse me, something just got in my throat as it was my turn to speak. Pardon me. I am the Democratic nominee for State District 51. And I am so honored that I worked really hard and won a 7-way primary by 60% of the vote. And I'm continuing to work hard to make sure that we not only elect me as a state representative to District 51, but elect Democrats up and down the ticket, starting with the governor's office. Because as you know, we have a lot of obstacles, as you had just mentioned, in our way. You know, I am a longtime champion of equity and social justice. And as you know, or may not know, that District 51 is a majority Hispanic seat. And we know that both brown and black individuals have been incarcerated at much greater numbers for small, having small amounts of marijuana on them. And they have, really have suffered a lot of the impacts that this unnecessary criminalization of marijuana has caused in their lives, and it has, devastated a lot of lives. And so I am fully supportive of legalizing and decriminalizing cannabis to allow us to empower people instead of prosecuting them. It'll allow us to spend fewer taxpayer dollars on needlessly locking up people. And it'll always help, and it'll help us bring much needed additional revenue for both the state and local governments. As you've heard Representative Howard say, she's on appropriations. She knows the needs we have in the state. And I think by, legalizing and taxing marijuana and would help us alleviate a lot of issues that we currently are facing. So I do support changing state law to allow residents with debilitating medical conditions, the full spectrum of medical cannabis, with physicians making their dosing requirements. And I support changing state law to make possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana a fine and no jail time as well. And I also agree with other colleagues have mentioned to expunge records of those who have been prosecuted in the past for these small amounts. So in summary, I believe in common sense reform of marijuana laws here in the state of Texas, and I look forward to being in the legislature to help build a coalition to make sure that we can get these laws changed and more favorable laws on the books going forward. So again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions and the dialogue we're going to have.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Lulu. I know I saw in the news, just maybe it was last week, that Speaker of the House, Dade Phelan, actually mentioned cannabis law reform, decriminalization as one of the issues he wanted to address in his social justice packages. So very excited to hopefully see those supermajorities supporting that policy. But again, concerned about that lieutenant governor. All right, so last but not least, we're going to go to Congressional District 10 with Bill Kelsey, the Libertarian candidate. I'll pass it over to you, Bill. You're muted, Bill.
All right, Bill Kelsey's my name. I'm a retired pilot, flight instructor, pigeon breeder, Arabic tutor. I don't need to take 3 minutes to say what I think about the marijuana laws. I first heard about the Libertarian Party with an advertisement in the mid-70s that said full legalization. And that's what I stand for. I don't think there's too much complicated about that. Attorneys and legislatures, they may find ways to make it complicated for the temporary steps. So for any advice on nuances or semantics or complications, I would defer to advice from Jackson, the fine people on NORML, to guide me in that way. I do not believe that it should be taxed at all. In fact, I would like it not to be taxed so that people can use it to calm down from the stress and trauma inflicted by all the other taxes that are weighing down upon us. And absolutely, there should be a plant that is not taxed, and this would be a good one not to tax. Definitely let people out of jail, and immediately, unconditionally, anybody in jail for, and as quickly as possible, expunge the records, people who've fallen afoul of the law and gotten a felony that's making it very difficult for them to get employment. That should be expunged and reversed. So that's where I stand. I'd like to put in a word in my time just to say that I wish everybody would also look at some of the horrors that the Washington regime inflicts abroad. In particular, I'm thinking right now about Yemen. As we smoke or enjoy our freedoms here in the United States, let's give some thought and raise our consciousness about what's going on abroad. I'd like us to work for a society that's less violent and less willing to go to war at the drop of a hat or for the benefit of the war profiteers. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, Bill. We're gonna do kind of like a speed round of questions with everybody real quick. So we've got a few questions that have been sent in, and what we'll do is I'll say the question and then we'll go in House District order. I'll call on you guys, or actually we'll go in the order that we went in, and you guys can give the answer. So this will be an easy one. I feel like it's a yes or no answer, really, but do you support home cultivation? So we'll start with House District 46. Tom Kost, do you support home cultivation? Muted. Everybody unmute yourself.
Thank you, Jax. Yeah, I totally support home cultivation. I actually have a garden and working on also starting up a little farm, and I could just really imagine, why not grow it yourself? And if that's what your passion is about, why would the government tell you not to grow your own medicine? Because they want to control you. That's why. So yes, I totally support that.
All right, next, House District 47, Vikki Goodwin, to home cultivate or not to home cultivate?
I say yes, with maybe some restrictions, like you couldn't sell it from your home, but you could use it for your own personal use.
Okay, thank you, Representative Goodwin. All right, House District 48, we'll start with you, Representative Howard. Support or not support?
Absolutely support.
Awesome. Yes.
I can go
Oh,
on and
yes.
on, but yes, I support.
Awesome.
Totally.
And Daniel, do you support home cultivation? Yes or no?
Yeah, unequivocally, we should definitely cultivate.
Thank you, Daniel, from the Yom Kippur porch. And now House District 50, James Talarico, do you support home cultivation?
Absolutely, I support it. I think we should be encouraging people to garden more at home.
All right. And Ted Brown, do you support home cultivation?
Yes, absolutely. People should be able to grow whatever they want on their own property.
All right. House District 51, Lulu Flores.
I would say yes, but I also would say, like along Representative Goodwin's I'd have to think about whether, I mean, obviously not for sale or consumption by others, definitely for your own personal use, of course.
Thank you. And Congressional District 10, Bill Kelsey, to home grow or to not home grow?
What kind of question is this? Does anybody ask me if I support growing tomatoes or asparagus?
Well, it's a
What-
complicated question for some people, so.
Yeah, well, there we go.
All right,
So-
Bill, I'm going to take that as a yes. Next
Yeah, that's a yes.
question might actually be a little bit more complicated, but in a short response, what do you think is an appropriate tax rate on marijuana for adult use and why?
I think the tax rate should be unequivocally zero. We already have a budget surplus here in Texas. And if you look at other states that are regulating and taxing marijuana growth and production, it's a big failure because the cost of weed is very high. And that's enabling a black market to continue to exist. And so Mexican cartels are still able to profit by selling weed because, okay, it seems like a good idea to raise taxes on this, that, and the other, but really we need to cut the spending. And this, again, is an individual freedom. And I'd like to characterize or show the differences between the libertarian and some of our Democratic colleagues that still want to fine you and they want to tax you and they want to put conditions on you growing stuff on your own property. They don't support all your freedoms and they won't support your Second Amendment freedom and your right for school choice and all these other things. And like I said in my opening statements, supporting freedom means you have to accept that other people are going to do things that maybe you don't like, but it's okay because they're not hurting anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All right, Vikki Goodwin, and what do you think would be a reasonable tax rate?
I am not sure about that, but I would think something similar to like what we have on cigarettes or alcohol.
Like a vice tax.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Representative Howard.
I would look at what the other states have done. I think there's a wide variety of ways that they have implemented taxation. I understand what's being said about, we shouldn't be taxing everything that happens around here, and certainly not taxing what you grow in your own yard. But the fact is that we do have a state that our primary source of revenue is sales tax. And if you're going to sell a product, then I would suggest that this would be a product that would also have a sales tax attached to it. I'm not talking about any kind of additional tax or different kind of tax, but similar to how we do any other taxes of sales products, because that's how we make the revenue that helps build the roads, that helps provide for all kinds of things that government actually does do that helps citizens live their lives as free as they can.
Thank you, Representative Howard. And Daniel McCarthy, did you want to respond as well on taxation?
Yeah, certainly. I did switch to the car instead of the porch. I was getting eaten alive out there. So I hope you can still hear me. The Wi-Fi is not as good over here. I would like to see zero taxation on it. It's just the same. I mean, I hear what Donna, Representative Howard is saying, and I applaud that. I think that's a very reasonable approach is, to just have a sales tax like any other product. But I have to agree with Mr. Kost that we need to cut spending. And anyway, I mean, there are taxes on gasoline, and some people might say that one's a fair one because you want to limit the amount people drive, save the environment. Plus, that gasoline tax is what pays for roads. We can pay for schools in a lot of ways without having to tax a plant that you can grow in your yard. So anyway, at the end of the day, I don't see the need to tax anything else. And in fact, I would like to tax fewer things, but marijuana, cannabis in general being one of those things, we don't need any more tax.
Thank you, Dan. James Talarico, what would you think would be a reasonable taxation rate?
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues in the legislature that marijuana shouldn't be exempt from taxation, including sales tax. But what I will say is that sales tax in general is a regressive form of taxation, meaning that it hurts working Texans more than wealthy Texans. And in fact, working Texans pay more as a percentage of their income in state taxes than wealthy Texans do. So I know my libertarian friends maybe want to get rid of most or all taxes, but if we're going to have taxation to, as Donna Howard said, pay for the roads and the schools and the bridges that allow us to function, then we should make sure that we're all paying our fair share. And that means folks with a lot of money need to chip in a little more. So I guess to answer your question, Matthew McConaughey's weed is going to be taxed a little bit more than maybe our weed. So we got to make sure that our taxes are fair and that folks with more resources are pitching in a little bit more.
Thank you, Representative Talarico. Ted Brown, go ahead and let us know your thoughts.
Well, in general, there's no reasonable level of taxation. And if you look at what's happening in Texas right now, there's a $27 billion budget surplus, which means that the government's taking in a lot more money than they have appropriated. And of course, that should all be returned to the taxpayers in one fashion or other, property tax relief or some other method. So it's kind of crazy to start advocating new forms of taxation. If every product in the state has a sales tax, marijuana could too. I mean, I'm not going to go crazy about that. I mean, you don't just pick one item out and not have sales tax on it if every other item does. I'd rather get rid of the sales tax completely if I could. But the problem is in other states, like in California, there's a massive amount of taxation and regulation. And the taxes are so high in the state level and the local level, et cetera, that marijuana is more expensive than ever. And it's cheaper to go back to the black market. And that's something we don't want. We want to have the legal market where people do not have to worry about the black market, where they can, go to a store and buy the product that they want and need. So no, there's no reasonable level of taxation, and you're probably not going to find libertarians that will give you any kind of reasonable percentage like that.
Thank you, Ted. And I'll turn it over to Lulu Flores. Your opinion, Lulu?
Well, I do think it should be taxed. I don't think personal consumption, perhaps if you're growing it in your own yard, that might be exempt, as well as if you're using it for medical reasons. I think maybe the tax should definitely be very small or definitely lower than recreational use. And I would maybe, I have to study this more, the issue in terms of other states have done different things, but a sales tax is regressive. So maybe an ad valorem tax, or I don't know. I have to do the research, but I think some form of taxation that could be fair. And that wouldn't make it prohibitively expensive, but definitely either having an exemption for medical use or a very low tax for that, as well as utilizing the revenues for this to be used for, either education or some other, beneficial use for the state.
Thank you very much, Lulu. Last but not least, Bill, Kelsey, please share your opinion with us.
0.
Short and sweet. Thank you, Bill. All right, let's do a speed round for our last question. So one of our viewers wants to know, do you support or oppose THC caps? So that means limiting the amount of THC that can be in a product, either by weight or by percentage. So we'll go ahead and we'll start off with you, Tom.
To be honest, I probably don't know enough about that to really give an honest opinion. I think, again, consumers and sellers should be allowed to make products, and the one that's the most successful. So if somebody wants to make a high THC product and people want to buy that, and it's, nobody's ever died from weed that I'm aware of, yet people die every day from alcohol and prescription drugs. The less government tries to choose things and they think they're going to make it better for everybody, and they never do. And there's either, a lot of times they call them unintended consequences, but really most of the time we know something bad is going to happen when we arbitrarily pick things like we're going to tax rich people more or this. I call them intended consequences, because when you make choices like that to single out particular groups for higher levels of taxation, you're going to have a bad effect on the overall people. So
just a reminder that this is the
wins.
speed round answer, Tom. So it's more like a yes, no. but I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to you, Representative Goodwin. Do you support or oppose THC caps?
I would need more information, but I would support labeling, just like we do with alcohol.
Wonderful, thank you. And Representative Howard?
Yeah, I think we all need a little more information here, but I do know that one of the things that we worked on with Stephanie Click was increasing the amount that could be used for medical purposes. And because it's not acceptable to the majority of the legislature right now, we couldn't go to the higher level. It got ratcheted back down to a little bit higher, but still lower. And I like to base my opinions on science and medicine. And we've had a real hard time with doing some good research here. But obviously, I think there should be a much greater percentage concentration being able to be used, because that's more effective. And so I need to know more about whether or not there should be a cap or not, but I'm definitely for looking at what the science says.
All right, thank you, Representative Howard. Dan McCarthy? You are muted.
Okay, sorry, playing tag there. No caps, and for two reasons, real quick. One, it's anti-consumer. It is going to, kind of like Con said about picking winners and losers. Only a few of the major operations and things are going to end up being able to comply with whatever strict little regulation government wants to put on that. It would be better if there were a plurality of producers, and on the producer side. And that would be better for the consumers if there were a plurality of producers. But on the producer side, I really think that everybody should grow it. I think it should be a major cash crop for farmers in Texas. And if they have to test every single plant, like that's not scalable. So anyway, yeah, no caps.
All right, thank you, Dan. Representative Talarico, you're next. You are also muted.
Thank you. I don't support caps, but I do support consumer protections, meaning transparency. When you go to HEB and you buy a food item, it tells you what's in that food item. It tells you what ingredients you used. I think the same should be the case when you go and buy marijuana. And I know this is a speed round, so I'll end it there.
Thank you. All right, Ted Brown, you're next.
Yes, definitely no caps. It's up to people to buy or decide what they're going to put in their own bodies. But actually, I do agree with James Talarico about truth in labeling. You should know what you're getting. And so if you want a certain percentage, that's the percentage you should get. So without accidentally getting something that you're not looking for. That's one of the problems now with illegal drugs, is you don't know what you're getting, and why there's so many overdoses of other kinds of drugs, because there's no fixed dosages, or people don't know what they're actually buying or putting into their bodies. You need to know, and I definitely believe in more knowledge.
All right, thank you, Ted. And Lulu Flores, you're next.
I basically have to agree. Am I muted? Oh, no.
No, you're great. I can hear you.
Sorry. I would say definitely list, the amounts. I think people should have the right to know what they're consuming. And so whether it's onerous or not, but I think if a product is being presented in the market, I think consumers need to be able to, for themselves and their own protection, be able to know what it is that they're consuming.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Bill Kelsey.
No caps.
No caps. All right. Well, folks, that wraps it up for the candidate forum portion of tonight. I want to thank each of the candidates so much for spending some time with us this evening. I will be putting this up on YouTube and sharing it with everyone so that everyone in the Austin area can watch and learn a little bit more about what is going on with our candidates and cannabis law reform. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to talk about some local updates. Feel free to continue watching, or, go finish your your Yom Kippur feast. So thank you very much, you guys. What I wanted to talk about real quick is voter registration. So we've got the candidates here. You guys need to make sure that you are registered to vote by the deadline, which is in just a few days. October 11th is our voter registration deadline here in Texas. And then very shortly after is early voting. So from October 24th until November 4th, you can go out and do early voting. Of course, you can find your polling places online very easily. I encourage you to do it during early voting because sometimes there can be lines on election day. But of course, election day will be on Tuesday, November 8th. Now, of note, on election day in Texas, we heard our legislators and our candidates here talking about the process and how we don't have a ballot initiative at the state level here in Texas, which is where our marijuana laws are made. However, there are some home rule cities that do have jurisdiction over mitigating certain types of cannabis penalties. And there are a few home rule cities like Austin, Texas, which are looking to pass these protection or depenalizations of the possession of small amounts of marijuana. Of course, it passed back in May here in Austin, and the cities that are looking to do that in November on the November ballot are going to be in San Marcos, Denton, Harker Heights, Elgin, and also in Killeen. So if you live in those cities, it's even extra important to be registered to vote so that you can vote yes on those propositions on the ballot. Now, if you live in Killeen, I did want to let you know that there will be a panel coming up that's hosted by Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana. It's going to be on Saturday, October 22nd at the Lions Club Park Senior Center, which and it'll be going on from 1 to 3:30 p.m. And it's going to have a panel for people who support the proposition in Killeen and for people who oppose the proposition in Killeen. So really important stuff happening at the local level, hopefully creating pressure that will build up for the legislature. Now, I also wanted to let you guys know that Texas NORML is updating our voter guide right now. It will be out shortly, and we will have our new general election version. Of course, you can still go to texasnormal.org/voter guide and find the primary edition and all of the legislative voting records there, but we will send out an email to you guys as soon as that is ready. It should be before early voting. So I wanted to finish by letting you guys know that just today, the FBI released their new 2021 arrest data. With only 3/4 of Texas agencies actually submitting their arrest data, Texas continues to lead the nation in marijuana-related enforcement and arrests. It's an unfortunate thing to be number one at. I can think of a lot of other things I'd like us to be number one at. But fortunately, Texas voters in November can take action in these localities with these citywide ballots. And even more importantly, with our state legislature in 2023, where we really have to prioritize these pledges from our legislators to act on these actions, because these people being arrested will be living with these collateral consequences for the rest of their life, which can be deeply impactful. So once again, I deeply appreciate all of our candidates for joining us tonight so that we can have a robust conversation on some of the generalities and also some of the nuances of this policy. So on that note, I want to tell you all have a wonderful Wednesday, and I will be back here with y'all next month where we will be having some more exciting conversations with people across Texas. So take care, everybody.